Hey YouTube, Chad here from Dirt Poor TV. Today what we're going to do is install this ice crusher cab heater on that. This is Chad from Dirt Poor TV. If this is your first time watching and you like this kind of content, please hit that subscribe button. For a cab heater for your UTV of any kind, go to icecrusherheaters.com. Check them out. This is how your ice crusher kit will come. It'll be in a box like this. Let's open it up. Take a look and see what we got inside. Here's everything you get in the kit displayed here. You have your instruction manual, which is really good. It's got templates in there. It's all color coded. It'll give you a list of parts. You have your heater core with your blower motor. We opted for the electronic pump, water pump. Here is the rocker switch and wire loom that controls that. Here is your wire loom for your fan. And here's the brackets that you have. You have some wire ties. You have a complete hardware kit, which includes hole saws for all of your ducting and vents. You have your ducting pipe and your intake pipe, so it brings in air from inside the cab, not from outside. And then you have all of your radiator hose. First thing we're going to do is remove the hood. Just pop these over, give them a twist. Set that aside. Up here at the front of the vehicle, you want to remove your windshield. If you have a full windshield, like us, we have a pop-up. So I just had to remove the clamps. Basically, it was two 4mm Allens on this side, two 4mm Allens on that side. Next up, we have to remove this piece right here, which it is going to take a 5mm Allen and then also a 10mm socket. Okay, we're at the back of the vehicle here at the battery box. We want to disconnect the negative cable and get it out of the way because we are going to be working with electronics on this thing. So there's 3 clips. Just push them down. Pop the cover off. Should be a 10mm. Go ahead and remove the 10mm bolt that holds your brake reservoir on. And move it out of the way. Now it's time to remove the center skid plate. Here is the center skid section removed. There'll be 16 of these 10mm bolts with these flanged washers. These are a 6.10mm. That's what you would use to take them off. And then there's one in the center here that is not flanged. It's just a bolt. And then also you will have 4 of the rivets, 2 rivets on this side, 2 rivets on that side. We're back here at the rear of the vehicle. We're going to remove the rear skid plate. There will be 6 recessed screws and 6 flanged screws. Here's the rear skid removed. You're going to have 6 of these that have the flange on them. They're 10mm. And then you'll have 6 of these that have the big flanged washer. Go ahead and remove the radiator cap. Make sure your vehicle is not hot. This one's been sitting for quite some time. So go ahead and crack them open with the 10mm and drain out your antifreeze. Here are the 2 coolant lines. They're almost done draining. Be prepared, they are under pressure, so make sure you don't do this one that's hot. After you have all your antifreeze drained from your coolant lines, go ahead and reinstall the 10mm nuts and tighten those down. Now would be a good time to install your radiator cap again, that you've drained all your fluid so you don't lose it. Here are all the templates cut out. Basically, I cut them all out at one time, and then I just label them as I go. 55mm hole saw, driver's side, left, front vent. Here on the driver's side, we've got the templates installed. There is the template for your fan switch. This is the driver's right side lower template in place. And this is your driver's left side lower vent template in place. Now, you were supposed to have a defrost one that goes in this position. And I have the switches here, so I'm not going to be able to do that. I've been looking at moving it to here. There are a couple brackets, and then you have the steering column back there, so it's something I'm going to have to look into. I don't know if this is going to work or not. I might have to go with a smaller vent to make that work. So this is a work in progress over here. I have to drill out these rivets with a 1/4 inch drill bit, so that's going to be next. I'll do that. I have the lower template in place. As you can see, it follows the bend in the body, and then it also follows where your foot goes, the angle on your foot. Okay guys, this is kind of, I'm down to the last one, but I'm going to show you how I get these rivets out. The best luck I've had is to get a pair of side cuts. You get in there a little bit. Don't use the 1/4 inch drill bit, kind of like the instructions. I'm using the 1/8 inch drill bit. So I don't know if I'm going to get a good view for you. Get in here. There you go. Then go back through, get this panel off, pry this off because it's stuck on there. Let's see if I can pry it off for you. Okay, pry that off, clean this up, and then you have to go back through with a 1/4 inch drill bit to drill these out. Okay, with your template in place, go ahead and drill out your 1/4 inch holes. And I recommend doing this with the template in place because they did not line up perfectly. So if you do it without the template in place, you would your holes wouldn't line up. So here's a little tip. You're supposed to drill these holes out, but how are you going to find center without using a compass and doing some measuring and all this and that? And you can't find center, you're just guessing, and you want it to look nice and you want to line it up. So what you do is you take one of your extra templates, save one or do this first, but this is the template that I'm not using over there. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that template underneath there, and I'm going to line it up to where I have center. And then mark my center hole. After you've checked to make sure that your diffuser works in here, install your push pins, and make sure you take a razor blade and put the notch in here so on your diffusers they won't spin. On the driver's side here, we're going to mark these two lower vents. the tape doesn't want to hold because of all the Armor All or whatever he uses to keep it clean. But this one seems to be holding pretty well. We're going to mark it. Come over to this side. Mark it. You can pull them off now. I'm going to drill them with a small drill bit. Make sure there's no wiring or anything behind there. So after I deburred the holes, I just go around there. I use this crane hook knife. I used to be a floor cover in my previous life. And I clean both of those out. And then now you're going to want to make that notch in there in both of them, so when you put the vent in, it'll stay in one place. Here's how I usually do it. I do it with the punch, then I go in with a smaller drill bit, and then I go in with a larger drill bit. But if you just want to get to it, you could go like this with a small drill bit. And mark both of them. And then pull your template down and be done. So now we'll drill these out. I have to do them one at a time because I'll have to change over the hole saw. Remember, always double check, make sure there's nothing behind there. Now make sure you put your notch in there. Now this one you don't have to notch because it's going to go in with screws. Now we're going to mount the intake part of the vent, and it's going to be mounted with 4 number 8 sheet metal screws. Okay, now we're going to drill the hole for the switch panel here. We're going to go through with a pilot hole. Remove your template, and then we're going to follow up with a 7/16 bit. Okay, now it's time to assemble the heater unit mounting brackets. These you're going to want to make sure you have them in the right orientation, and you also have this going the right way, your heater core. You'll have both your brass fittings, have those at the top, have your bracket like this. These are nuts, so you want those nuts on the inside. You wouldn't want them on the outside. So let's go ahead and install this. You're going to use the M6 by 1 by 12 millimeter screws. Now that you have your bracket loosely installed, you're going to want to cut your hose that you have. If you have a 2-seater, you're going to get 14 feet of hose. So you're going to cut one at 6 feet, and that'll leave you 8 foot left over. And it doesn't matter which one of these brass fittings you put it on, just make sure you lube these up a little bit with some water, some soapy water, so they slide on nice and easy. Once you have your hoses on and your hose clamps tightened down, we're going to go ahead and put the cover plate on. And you are going to use, there's 4 1/4" by 3/4 serrated flange bolts, and they're going to go right in here. Okay, after you've mounted your splash guard bracket to the 2 side brackets, make sure you have all your bolts are tight. You're going to want to take the wiring harness and one of the supplied zip ties, and we're going to want to connect it over here to this side. just like that, and cut your excess off. Now we are going to connect the supplied intake hose and zip tie to the intake housing down here. And right there it is, so I'll get that connected. Now that we have the hose attached, we can go around to the inside. We can attach the front cover plate. Okay, at the front of the machine, you're going to want to drill out these holes that are in the frame. There's one on each side with a 1/4 inch drill bit. That's where you're going to mount your heater core. Take your supplied white wiring harness and connect it to the white wiring harness of the blower motor. And they are indexed. It only goes on one way. Let's take the unit over to the vehicle and mount it in its place with the 1/4 inch bolts. This is about the best view I can give you. Go ahead and route your hoses down. Just leave your unit sitting up here. Route your hoses down there. You don't want your wiring harness to go down there, so keep it to the side. And what you want to do is, once we get this tip to go down in there, we're going to want to hook up the intake at the same time. So start it going down in there. Push your hoses as you go. It's almost on. Okay, then take your zip tie. And tighten it down and cut that off. Go ahead and work your unit down in there. Okay, it's in place. Let's get our 1/4 inch bolts. Throw those in. And your locking nuts. Now it's time to assemble all the ducting. You'll have your little diagram here. All these measurements are in compressed state. So what I did here is I just taped a little ruler to the table, and let's just start out. I need a 2 inch. So we're going to compress this till I get to 2 inch. Take a utility knife. And then I use a pair of side cuts to cut the nylon wire in there. And that is my 2 inch compressed. So Once I have that, and I'm just going to show you on the first one, I'm not going to show you every one of them. So here's my 2-inch, and it says it needs to go into a Y. So what I'll do is I will spray a little bit of soapy water on here. And then we will mount the ductwork to it. Take a zip tie. Now it's time to hook up all your vent hosing to your vents. Go ahead and run all the lines just like it shows on your diagram here. You might have to change a few things. If I'm going to keep this flap here, I ended up having to drill a couple holes through here. I used their hole saw and I'll pull it through and I'll attach it to here. But then the other one from like the passenger side, I need a little bit longer hose if I'm going to do that, to drill a hole and come through there, but I probably will. So you might have to, change it a little bit, but not much. Well, I'll catch you guys up to speed here. We have all the duct work finished. I did have to deal with this rubber flapping piece that I guess it blocks the wind and maybe some mud from getting back up in there. But I just drilled holes through it. I used the actual hole saw that came in the kit, but it turned out really nice. And you run over here, there's your passenger side, and you have another one down low for your passenger side and your intake. This one right here that runs around the power steering, that's for your hand warmer for the driver. And this one here comes out, goes over the top of my brake reservoir. It comes out and goes over here, and I had this fuse block that I had to take out several times and modify the way it was mounted and everything, but no big deal. We got that all back in. Now I'll show you the inside. Let me grab the light. Okay, so we have our lower one here. On this side over here would be for your hands. They call this one here, I think, a foot warmer maybe. And then we were supposed to have one up here for your defrost, but he has a switch panel. So I looked into putting the round one up here, the extra one that's supposed to be your defrost. It didn't seem like it would fit in there very well, the round vent. I think we're going to get a rectangle one and cut it in here and do that a little bit later. But right now we just want to keep moving forward and get this thing done. We'll move over here to the passenger side. We still have all the electrical to hook up, which I say all the electrical, it's basically just plugging it into the switch panel. You'll see when we get to that point. So on this side you have your foot warmer, which would be this one. Then you have your intake. Up here you would have a defrost or hand warmer for your passenger. Now we've moved on to the wiring. So this is the wire loom that comes up to the switch. This is your switch, so go ahead and plug that together. And then you're going to have your positive here, which it is going to go down here to a keyed switch, which is right here. And then your black wire, which is your ground. I still have it way over here. You also are going to ground it here to the same switch housing. Now, I could use his fuse block, but the fuse block is hot all the time. So I don't think we would want it to be on all the time, just in case you left the fan running. Now we could also use a relay and key this fuse block to where when I turn the key on, then the fuse block is hot. But I'm not getting into all that. We're just getting this heater in here. If we decide to do that later, that's what we'll do. We'll put a relay and then we'll put this fuse block on a relay off the key. Okay, the wiring is now complete. There's your white plug down there. It comes, the wire harness comes out, comes up here, goes behind this bracket over here, goes right to this plug in here. So this would be your auxiliary power and your ground. And then also it runs up to your switch panel. And there is the switch panel mounted. The key on, whoops. Okay, so there's off. 1, 2, 3. Off. I ended up cutting a switch here into the dash for the water pump. I have the red and black wire here off the switch that needs to go to a positive and negative. And then you're going to have, roughly 7-8 feet of this wire that has to run all the way to the back to the pump. Go ahead and remove the mounting bracket that comes on the water pump and its hardware that's not needed in this kit. What you are going to need is the 1/4-20 bolts, washers, and locking nuts. So here's the mounting bracket. And what you want to do here is make sure you have it in this orientation. You're going to want to put the bolts through from the plate side with a washer and a nylock nut. And you can go ahead and tighten those on down. Okay, and you are going to want it basically look like this. If you have it like this, a little bit of a turn here. And you can go ahead and snug them down, but don't tighten them because you'll end up moving these around once we get it over to the vehicle. Now we have the hoses ran to the back here. Obviously they're not going to come out this way, they're going to come out on the other side of this suspension arm. So I also have my electrical ran out, and I've trimmed it down because the line was very long, so must be for a 4-seater also. So I trimmed it, put the connections together, and then taped it up, and now we are ready to mount our pump up here. We have to remove these two 10mm brackets. So I'll temporarily be mounting this in place, and then what I'll do is I'll do all my connections with my hoses. I'll cut them all to length, because without this being in place, I really don't know what length of hoses I need, and sometimes having too much hose doesn't really work out. It almost kinks. It'll put a kink in the hose. So now we can cut our lines and run those up to the pump, and then out of the pump back into the longer of the two lines that you have. And then we'll have to cut the line up front here with this 90-degree. It has a 90-degree bend in the hose. We'll have to cut it up here and put in a barb and reroute that. So the antifreeze is going to go from this pump into our auxiliary pump, out of the auxiliary pump to the front of the machine, to the heater core, from the heater core back, and it's going to return to the return line down low here by the motor. So we have the electronic fuel pump mounted to its bracket. We have the little hose extension on here with the 90. From your oil bypass line, or actually your coolant bypass line, I took it and I cut it the whole length to where it would go to the 90 up here, so you don't have another splice in. And then now we're ready to hook in to our line that runs up front to our heater core. Before we do that, we want to run water through all the hoses and through the heater core, so it coats everything and it makes it so much easier, and we don't have any air pockets in there when we go to run the antifreeze. Believe me, this is a step you do not want to skip. We're going to turn the water on right now and go ahead and fill all the lines in the heater core. Here it should be coming any second. Okay, it's going through, all the air is coming out. Okay, since we have our line going into our pump, our line going out hooked up, we're going to go ahead and hook up the pump to the battery box mounting location. Okay, now that we have our oil cooler line going into our electric pump, and then we have our line going out that goes to the front to the heater core, and all of our hose clamps are tight. We have our power plugged in, so we can go ahead and mount it to the battery box in its permanent location. So everything's mounted up back here. All the hosing is connected, tied up. The electrical lines are connected and tied up. We don't have the skid plate on yet. We do have the switch in here, and then also your fan switch, and then all your vents, of course. Out here we have filled up your antifreeze in the radiator, and then also maxed it out in the coolant tank. We have the power ran from the switch and also the fan switch. So right now we're ready to fire this thing up and cycle it through a heat cycle. Let's start it up and bring it to a high idle. Get it up to temperature. Okay, the fan is kicked on, so it's up to its temperature. We'll check the hoses. The hoses for the, let's check the temperature on the heater core. See what we got for temp there. Yep, finally the lower radiator hose, it's warm. It took a long time for it to get warm. Yeah, the heater core is still cold. It's at 70 degrees. I think we've got an air pocket in there, so what we'll do is we'll add more fluid, and then we'll pinch the radiator hose to where it will force all the fluid through the heater core. We are down on fluid antifreeze, so we're going to go ahead and top it back off. Okay, it did take 3 heat cycles to actually get heat to come out the vents. I had 117 degrees coming out the vents, but on the 3rd heat cycle, I used my clamp, and I came up here and I clamped the upper radiator hose until the fan kicked on. And then when the fan kicked on, I came out, unclamped it, and I let it run until the fan cooled itself down and shut off. And at that time I was getting the heat out of the vents, so I turned the vehicle off. I've double checked my antifreeze and my coolant tank, and now we're going to turn it on. This is going to be the 4th heat cycle, and we'll see if we have heat right away. I'm holding at 2,000 RPM. I do have the pump on. Temperature gauge is only showing 1 bar. Getting 104 degrees out of the vent. T-bars on the temp gauge. the temperature gauge. 138 out of the vent. Still at 2 bars on the temp gauge on the dash. $151. We just finished up this ice crusher heater installation with the electronic pump on this Honda Talon. If you're looking for an in-cab heater for any of your UTVs, check out icecrusherheaters.com. I've done several of them. I've got quite a few videos of them out there. I really like their product. I want to say thanks to my sponsors, thanks to all my subscribers out there. I really appreciate everything you guys have done for the channel. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. If you like this content, just give me a thumbs up. That'll help. Thanks for watching Dirt Poor TV. Have a good one.